Shane, now, were you always a Street Fighter gamer, or did you just start playing the new one and dove headfirst into the lore?
So Street Fighter 2 came out when I was like, 13, 12, something like that. So I was playing a lot of Street Fighter 2. You know what I mean? That was like the arcade game du jour, unless you were playing like NBA Jam or Iron Mike's off-road racing.
Were you actually playing Street Fighter 2 on a cabinet, or did you get it for like the Super Nintendo? Okay.
No, I would do it in the cabinet. No, look, Stanislav. I mean, I was so into Street Fighter 2 that I had a coffee tin, which is weird because I don't know where that came from. My family didn't drink coffee out of like a coffee tin. I don't think they drank that much coffee, but I had a tin, right? And I cut a hole in the top for like dollars and coins to go into, and then I pasted like the Sears catalog or like maybe the Toys R Us ads of the Super Nintendo on the side of the can for like my incentive to be like, oh, if you save up, you can get that Super Nintendo in Street Fighter 2. I had like combo sheets on my walls of my room. I don't think I was particularly good, but I liked it a lot. My friends who had Super Nintendos, I would be like, oh, yeah, let's play some Street Fighter. Let's do this. But then I fell way off. I didn't play fighting games for since Dreamcast. Do you remember Soul Calibur?
I played a lot of Soul Calibur on PlayStation 1.
Whoa.
Soul Calibur. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, Soul Calibur 2 was like one of the good games on Dreamcast. I played a lot of that.
I mained the Greek girl.
Greek girl.
Yeah, and the guy with the nunchucks in Soul Calibur. Those are the two people I played.
There were nunchucks in Soul Calibur?
Are we talking about the same game, Dave?
Soul Blade. Is Soul Blade the first one? I played the first one.
I think so.
Soul Blade.
Yes,
that's what it is.
There were future ones.
Because Soul Calibur was not on PlayStation, but maybe Soul Blade was.
Yeah.
I forgot about that. But no, and then I just was like, okay, this new one's coming out. Let's get in deep. And it's been fun. My buddy came over the other day, who's local, and we played face to face. We played some Street Fighter 6, learned some stuff.
Did you play for Magic cards like I did in 11th grade, 10th grade?
You played for Ante? That's not officially in the rules, Dave.
We played Street Fighter 2 for Ante, yes.
Stanislav, it's good to see you. It's been forever.
Yeah, I just want to say I had very different art on my wall growing up. I was not putting cheat codes.
Was it a Corvette with some
with Farrah Fawcett on the hood?
Stanislav, should you introduce this podcast?
Oh, yeah. I should probably pull up the show notes to do that, huh? Although I suppose I could do it from memory after 231 some odd episodes. Well, hello and welcome to The Dive Down, a Magic the Gathering podcast focused on the latest decks, trends, and strategies for the casual spike. My name is Stanislav here in Manchester, and with me on the line from Denver, Colorado, it's the one and only Shane Beeps.
Stanislav, my friend, I feel like it's been too long since I've seen your face. What time is it? Are you 8 hours ahead of me or 9 hours ahead of me? What time is it?
7 hours ahead of you. It is 8:11.
Is it 8 p.m. your time? Oh, only a mere 7? Perfection.
It's 20 p.m. It's just 20. They don't say p.m. or a.m.
It's just, there's no p.m. It's just 20. If it's 20 p.m., that would be, does that circle back around?
No. What?
Okay, I don't know.
Man, it's so annoying because people will write hours in 24 hours, but they don't say 20 to one another. They'll still speak in a.m. p.m. So
hold on, what?
It's, pick a lane. And then when I point out the absurdity of it all, they accuse me of needing child's time. Oh, yeah, you American, you need child's time, don't you?
Child's time. 20 is the hardest one, right? Because everyone else says 2100 or 2200 for you can say that easily. What do you say, 2000? It's 2000 o'clock? Or do you say 2000? What do people... It is the hardest one because all the other ones you can say 1900, 1800. They all sound fine. 2000 sounds weird.
It's £1.
Yeah.
No, Shane.
Stands here at the most
Shane,
difficult time.
That's deeply offensive. Also with us is the Godfather, Dave Harbarger.
Hey.
So
Dave, long time no see.
Yeah, you were just at my house 3 days ago. What do you mean? Long time no see.
I was just teeing that up.
It was like another life. It's like another life. Last week was crazy.
Was it crazy?
Kind of busy. I was out of town, and then we were doing a bunch of house prep, and then we had a big 4th of July barbecue, and Shane and his lovely spouse were here, and then we hung out, and then there was rain, and then my battery backup failed in the middle of the barbecue.
Oh, yeah. We made a battery.
Battery backup failed in the middle of the barbecue, so there was a high-pitched alarm going off when people had a bunch of cocktails, and I had to crawl into a crawl space and disconnect the battery. Problem? I disconnected the battery, and then the next day...
You unplugged it.
Yeah, I unplugged the whole thing.
That's how you solved the problem.
Yeah. And then the next day, I had to make a battery.
That was fun. Battery acid everywhere.
Yeah. Stan, did you know that if you buy a battery, sometimes from Home Depot, it comes empty, and then you have to go get a box of sulfuric acid and dump it into the battery to make it into a battery?
This is just classic
DIY battery, baby.
Yeah.
Classic American deregulation. The acid lobby.
You can put whatever kind of acid you want in there. It turns out the batteries come empty. Dump lemon juice in there and see what happens if you want. I bet it won't work.
I bet you would work poorly.
I bet it won't keep your basement dry.
Never happens with a British battery. Fine British battery, same build, same design as 1774.
Full of biscuits.
Only one company is called the King's Battery Company.
Yeah.
And it treats you right. You can use it to light a torch.
Perfect.
Which is what they call
Not that
a
kind
flashlight.
of battery. You're going to put a 20-pound battery attached to a flashlight?
It's a very, very bright flashlight, aka torch.
Only one kind of battery.
Very not powerful battery.
We're not talking about batteries today. No, we're talking about modern, the people's format. In fact, it's going to be an interesting episode. We have a lot of results to go through.
So many. I'm going to spill some tea about the preparation of this episode, okay?
Okay.
You did too much. You didn't curate it enough for your own sanity, it sounds like.
Ostensibly, it was going to be a deck dump episode, right? Because it was like, there's 100 decks in this deck dump. And then, like, as we went through it, it's like, oh, wait, something doesn't seem quite right with their deck curation. And meaning, like, there was so many decks that were, like, just 1 or 2 cards different, which is kind of like, it used to be, like a good handful, 10, 12, 15 cards.
It was something like that. Yeah.
There was, like, a rule.
And so I was like, okay, well... Yeah, I think it was a technological rule. It was like, if difference greater than X, put in list, and then everyone's like, well, this is clearly curated by hand to indicate, the power of some things and not others. But anyway, so what it ended up being was like, okay, this deck dump is not particularly telling about much related to modern. And I did a lot of work in that. It was just like, okay, what are these decks doing? What's the difference between them? Then it was like, oh, wait. We have the NRG Team Trios. Oh, wait, we have this giant tournament for the Legacy European Tour. Oh, wait, we have like a big challenge, like one of the major modern challenges. And so it just sort of kept scaling into this, well, let's just talk about what's going on in the overall meta. And there's just a lot of stuff. There's a lot of results, a lot of stuff to talk about.
And we're going to try to discuss as much of it as possible. But first, some housekeeping. No new patrons, no increased tiers, but we do have a new review from Chili.
Chili.
Oh.
Chili, that's the title of the review, Chili.
MTG and Chili, yum daddy. Oh, it's from Patty McDaddy.
So this clearly is in response to the person on Reddit who posted a couple weeks ago saying, hey, remember when you guys talked about your Chili Cook-Off award-winning recipe last fall?
Your wife's award-winning
my
chili.
wife's, exactly. And yeah, they asked for it, and I posted it in Reddit, and so we got a review out of it. So that's how you do community engagement, friends.
Talk about chili. We're just talking about chili, Dave. I have some Cincinnati style chili I made before I left for my trip. Mm-hmm. I made it. I chucked it in the freezer, and now it's thawed in my fridge. Oh man, I can't wait to eat that. It's of course using Beyond Meat.
I was gonna say there's no meat in there, but
Beyond Meat.
Okay.
Yeah, this is delightful.
It'll be good. It's still good, right?
Oh yeah, it's amazing. I made it before. It's perfect. It's perfection. Awesome. So that's my award-winning chili.
Well, if you want the same chili recipe that this person gave us a 5-star review on iTunes for, go check out our Reddit post from about 2 episodes ago.
Perfect.
What
else do we have, Stan? What other kind of housekeeping do we have?
I need to know. What's a Cincinnati chili? What do you put in there? Like hoagies or something?
Have you been to Skyline or heard of Skyline Chili? It's a fast food restaurant in Cincinnati.
It's a parlor, David.
Okay, it's a parlor. That's what it is. It's Cincinnati style. It's Skyline style chili, but there's a number of different places that make it there.
If you just know one person from Ohio they will not shut up about Skyline chili. Like, it's their one claim to fame. The Rock and Roll Hall of Fame sucks. All they have is the chili.
These are opposite ends of the state, though. You won't often find people from Cleveland who want to talk to you about Skyline. You know,
Skyline talk to you. It's not in Cleveland at all?
There's one single Skyline in Cleveland, but there's like 30 in Cincinnati. Like, it's very much a Southern Ohio thing.
But really what it is, Stanislav, is it's really just like a seasoned meat sauce, and it is served on top of spaghetti, all covered with cheese.
Cheddar
that's a three-way.
To be clear, cheddar cheese on top of spaghetti with chili, and it's called a three-way, and it's kind of Greek-inspired in the spices, but it's really a bolognese. It's like a bolognese, basically. It's like a somewhat Greek-inspired bolognese with cheddar cheese and spaghetti.
Yeah, that's the thing. So yeah, there you go. 11 and a half minutes. We did it.
Too much. We have a lot of results to go on. But
we haven't even talked about the Patreon.
So if you want more chili content, please check us out at patreon.com/thedivedown. You know, help us out, become a patron of our podcast. We've been doing this for a while. You know, we know podcasts can ebb and flow. We could really use your support over the Patreon. So go check out patreon.com/thedivedown. If you would rather give us a little bit of support without going through the overlords at Patreon, you can go to our store at thedivedown.com/store to buy hats, shirts. They will mail out immediately because because those are print on demand. Someone handles them. We just do the design. They pop up. You will get them in about a week if you buy them there. People really love the hats, by the way. The hats are quite nice. And Shane is wearing one right now. That's right. Mana Traders. You know, Mana Traders has been a longtime sponsor and partner of the Dive Down. If you want to try out renting cards on Magic Online, you know, there's an all-access pass right now on Magic Online, but still, that won't be forever. Go check out manatraders.com. Use code TheDiveDown2023 to get 10% off of your first 2 months of rental cards. And in other Magic stuff, go to NRG Plus, Nerd Rage Gaming. Use code DIVE8 to just buy some cards and get 8% off. That is just a gift to you from the fine people at Nerd Rage Gaming. And finally, this week we can announce a new sponsorship. Is that right?
That's right, Dave. And this might be a sponsor that some folks recognize. Fans of the show may recall late last year, we had a guest on. Randy from Heavy Play came to talk about his Kickstarter for a new line of Magic card accessories. And we are thrilled to announce that Heavy Play is now one of our esteemed sponsors on the Dive Down. If you don't recall, Heavy Play is a card gaming accessory brand that is designed to improve your gameplay and your whole game day. Their playmats, deck boxes, and card sleeves feature qualities such as enhanced ergonomics, mobility, and protection to make sure that your cards are taken care of and everything is easy to use. Their Equip Mag system allows you to magnetically attach dice trays, your bundle decks, and carry your playmat all in a single hand in one beautifully attached, elegant mechanism. You can get it at your local game store, or you can shop at heavyplay.com. And you can also use promo code TheDiveDown2023 to get 10% off your first order from heavyplay.com. That's TheDiveDown2023. I was using Heavy Play this weekend. I used the whole system. I went to an RCQ on Saturday. I had the dice box. I had the deck box, and I used the playmat. I did not use a Dive Down playmat. I was using the Heavy Play playmat strictly for convenience purposes, and you get exactly what's on the tin. It was so simple to just attach everything to one thing, not have to fumble with your playmat, roll it up into a plastic tube like an idiot.
Don't be an idiot. Use Heavy Play.
Yeah, I'm sure Randy's going to love that tagline. Yeah, but you know, we've had prototype stuff from Heavy Play for a while that we've been testing and play with. Love the stuff. Randy, we've been talking with him for a long time about doing this partnership. Go check out heavyplay.com, as Stan said.
Sweet. All right. So, as Stan mentioned, actually, I think Dave mentioned this, NRG, one of the ongoing supporters of the Dive Down. We are the official podcast of the NRG series. It takes place all over areas of the Midwest. Just a few weeks ago, we talked about the Chicagoland Modern 10K event. This weekend, they had a Team Trios event in St. Louis, I believe. Mm-hmm. And that means Pioneer, Modern, and Legacy with 92 teams entering. We'll talk about each one of their decks in just a minute. But of course, because of the Team Trios event, we can't really know the performance of the modern decks. But I think what's interesting here is to look at the breakdown of what people brought, see how the meta is beginning to shift in these paper tournaments with a significant impact of Lord of the Rings and, of course, the One Ring. So I thought we'd start with the usual, the modern meta breakdown. And it's pretty interesting because if you remember just a few weeks ago, we had some data for what people who attend these NRG events were bringing, and things are turned a little upside down now. And that begins with 4-color control being the most popular deck in the room. 15.2%, 14 teams brought 4-color control. As everyone's been talking about, these are significantly more popular and more powerful with the addition of Delighted Halfling and the One Ring, potentially some Reprieve if you want to go that way. And these decks performed pretty well. 5 of the teams of the 14 made the top 32. Of course, it's challenging. It's impossible to say that these decks performed well, right? These teams performed well with someone in this modern seat running these decks. So just keep all that in mind.
I mean, I have a feeling we're going to talk a little bit more about performance later on and from the non-team results that we have, but these team results are a good place to start.
Yeah. Living ends up next. 9 teams, almost 10% of the metagame. Strong meta share for Living End here. Of course, this is universally seems to run the new land cyclers, cuts down on the lands. Not an extremely strong showing for these teams, however. The top appearance was 12th place, but this quickly fell to the middle of the pack or lower after that 12th place team deck.
Surprising. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I think we'll talk, I think, more about these decks in detail and perhaps the other sections where it's individual performance. I'm just going to keep running through here. Mono Green Tron, again, 9 copies, almost 10% of the meta. Second most popular deck, tied with Living End. That's something, right? Like, this is a major shift in popularity now that the One Ring is just part of the plan. I don't think the teams that ran this deck performed particularly well. 2 of them in the top 32, but overall, I just want to talk about this for a second. Like 9 teams of 92 were just like, hey, let's bring Mono Green Tron. And formerly, if just a few people were on Tron, just kind of the old Tron stalwarts, the hardcore Tron folks were bringing the deck. But now it's just like, hey, we think this is a good deck.
I mean, we'll be really curious to see where this goes with some of the other tournament inputs that we have, but I don't think we should be too surprised. It had some moments on Magic Online recently. It definitely had a moment in the last NRG tournament from the week before last as well. So, I think that people want to get Ring out. We talked a lot with Devin last week about Karn being a good counterplay to other decks playing the Ring. It fits.
Yeah, I think in addition to that counterplay, just the overall Tron go big strategy is pretty good at going over the Omnath decks too. So I think there's like a paper, scissors, rock situation happening here as well.
Mm-hmm. But if we cut off to those 3 decks right now, 4-color control, Living End, Mono Green Tron, keep those in your brain, everybody, because I have a feeling that we're going to keep coming back to those 3 as a little group as we go through the rest of this discussion.
For sure. And then another deck I think we'll talk about just a lot this episode is the next one, Golgari Yawgmoth. 7 copies, 7.6% of the metagame. The most typical new inclusions are Delighted Halfling. Many of these are running some number of Orcish Bowmasters, even some teams running the One Ring here and there. That's hardly seems to be standard, much as Delighted Halfling and Orcish are. And 5 of these 7 teams made top 32. I'm sure it's all on the back of Orcish Bowmasters and Delighted Halfling in these Yawgmoth decks, but yeah, I think we're going to have a lot to say about Yawgmoth the rest of the app, but Yawgmoth is typically pretty well represented at NRG tournaments, but this is, it's a good showing. The fourth most popular deck on the weekend. Mono White Hammer. Remember this little chestnut. 6 copies, 6.5% of the metagame. There's also a single Azorius Hammer that's not included in this total of 6. So I think we're still seeing people think that this is what they want to bring to the tournament. They're still believing in it. Clearly a bit less than before. I mean, not dramatically. I mean, it's such a small field of 92 teams. I mean, that's people on the floor. It's 276, but we only have 6 modern decks, 2 of the 92 to represent this. But Yeah, I think before we'd probably see Hammer more in the 10+%. So it's kind of dropping here. The only real shift is the continued use of Forge Anew in the main deck, and 2 of these teams made top 32 with the list. So what have you all been thinking about Hammer? I feel like it's been kind of out of the conversation since the release of Lord of the Rings. Like, people are really focusing on Orcish Bowmasters, Deleted Halfling, the One Ring, and not many people are kind of really focused on, oh yeah, Forge Anew is really changing the game for Mono White Hammer.
Well, it's certainly not changing the game because I don't know about these lists in NRG. Tell me if I'm wrong, but all of the lists that I've seen have it as a 1 of or a 2 of.
Yeah, 1 or 2 of,
at best. And almost like 80% of the ones that I've looked at when I was putting together a paper list of this, just because I have Hammer, had Forge Anew as 1 of, so I just put the 1 of that I opened in the deck and said that's fine, which is kind of how I thought it would be played. So I think this deck was already had a down arrow next to it. Devin had talked about that a little bit recently as well when he's been on the show, and I'm kind of surprised that this is 5th or 6th on the list. I guess I would expect it to be a little bit lower at this point, but when you get to 4, 5, 6% of the meta, you're really looking at a bunch of decks that are about the same tier anyway in my mind.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I mean, I also think with like kind of just the increased possible prevalence of things like Karn the Great Creator, or kind of just other artifact exile hate perhaps, or like kind of artifact ways that people have to invalidate, whether it's going to be the ability to equip things or just increased nullification of the power of these things. Like, it makes sense that Mono White Hammer will probably just continue to see sort of a potential downfall, but who knows? I mean, it's a kind of thing where if people are bringing in a few different pieces of artifact exile hate, then it doesn't seem quite that bad, because that's just sort of replacing the destruction effects with exile effects, and that's not necessarily quite as bad, although it does make Forge Anew less valuable.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know. I don't know, like, if Mono White Hammer, like you said, Dave, it was already kind of decreasing in popularity and potential power, as sort of maybe other boats were. I mean, I guess all boats rise at the same rate if they're in the same lake. I don't know. It's a bad metaphor.
Well, let's see what happens with this one and the rest of the of the tournaments.
5-color creativity, 6 copies as well, 6.5. This is the biggest shift since the last paper tournament, just a few weeks ago. Creativity was the most popular deck at Chicagoland, if my memory serves me correct. And I think a lot has been said about creativity and how it's going to be impacted by the shifting metagame around it, right? It's like, I don't think it's in a great position right now with, One Rings are providing protection from things like Archon triggers. The counter magic that creativity relied on potentially has less utility with all these things like
halflings.
The halflings, exactly. 2 of the teams still made top 32 here, but 5-color creativity definitely on the downswing, at least from the people who attended this event. Rhinos with 5 copies, 5.5%. Not very popular this weekend and wasn't on high-performing teams. Only 1 team made the top 32. No one's appearing to try things like Ringos, and no one's really running Bone Crusher Giants. A surprising absence maybe in most lists. Maybe people are just saying like, hey, I'm going to run this thing back. I'm just going to see what happens, and no one's shifting things up with like Questing Beast or Bone Crusher Giant.
Yeah, I think part of it is that it's not just about trying to get around the One Ring. It's that the living end matchup is so difficult that you're both like getting bogged down by fog effects, as well as like the card living end is just such a house against you. And the combination of grief plus force of negation plus living end's cascade combo being like really good against your plan makes it pretty difficult, I think, for hammers in a field where there's a lot of living end going around.
You mean Rhinos, by the way? He's just said hammers, but yeah.
Yes.
No, when Stan sees a nail, all Rhinos are hammers.
Yeah, exactly. Sometimes when you're a nail, everything looks like a hammer. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I think also too. I mean, there's more Teferi 3. Not going to be great against Cascade. That's just not something you want to see a lot of. So, I think that makes sense. Like, it's just not a great place for Rhino players, I think, right now out there. Jeskai Breach, 5 copies as well. These are notably separated from the Is It Breach decks, of which, I will spoil it, there were 3. The One Ring is showing up in these Jeskai lists, and the teams using it had a strong performance. 3 of the 5 teams made top 32, potentially higher, as we'll talk about in a second, so more on that in a bit. Rakdos Scam, only 4 teams on Scam. 4.3%. Orcish Bowmasters were popular in all of these lists. One team even seemingly attempted to fight the One Ring with Sheoldred in the main deck.
Well, if they take 1 damage from a Bowmaster trigger, why not try 2 damage from a Sheoldred trigger? You know what I'm saying?
Good. Seems good. Strong performance here. 3 of the 4 made the top 32. Azorius Control featuring Kira also had 4 copies. Less popular than the Omnath-based 4-color control decks. Azorius is using the One Ring to add to its potential power. 2 of these teams made the top 32. Amulet Titan, 3 copies, 3.3%. Another deck some people, not everyone, is trying to use the One Ring in, and one of these teams made the top 32. We have 3 Izzet Breach folks not using the One Ring. These are the classic Izzet style we've seen in the past. 2 of these 3 teams, though, made the top 32. And then other were 17 teams, but 18.4% of the metagame. In this other, there was no Murktide.
So there was no Murktide in any of the 96 teams or whatever?
92 teams, no Murktide.
Unbelievable.
I mean, it was just did something get miscategorized? Was that off the list somehow? It just blew my mind that no one was playing Murktide. I mean, I guess it's the type of thing where it's what's changing for us here? What's appealing for the paper player going to hang out at an event and saying yeah, I'm going to run Murktide back, right? Where they're how's it particularly attacking the meta?
Yeah. I mean, again, this is just one piece of the meta that we're looking at, and it's a really specialized piece at that. I will say we're very used to NRG players running a lot of Murktide.
Yeah.
For what it's worth. But I know that on some of these events, Murktide was still a player in them. And so I don't know if that's a trend that means anything other than maybe people did want to play it in a team tournament for some reason, but...
That's kind of my assumption. I feel like if I'm prepping for a team tournament, I'm under the pressure to play a deck that can earn me free wins, and I don't know that Murktide has any in this environment.
Yeah, you want to pick a deck that gives you free wins like 4-color control. That. See, I totally agree with you, Stan. That's how I would approach it. If let's say the 3 of us were on a team and I was in the Modern seat somehow, because I know you guys would put me on Legacy because none of us know anything about Legacy. So you'd be like, Dave, play Legacy. But
you have the expensive cards, Dave.
Yeah, exactly. But it is funny to see that exact thing where I'm yeah, I could see people playing Tron and Living End as being things that are really kind of free gamey, and then being but 4-color control was still what people picked more than anything else is a little surprising.
And other thing I thought was kind of surprising was a really low amount of Asmo food combo stuff as well. Just 1 copy of those decks. I think those are something that people are paying a bit of attention to recently, and so I'm kind of mildly surprised that no one was just yeah, let's try this Asmo food thing. It seems I'm having a lot of luck with it, but again, it's one of those things that maybe it's just there are decks that do similar things just more reliably, more consistently, and like you said, are kind of maybe more with a free win thing, like a Living End or even a Green Tron or something like that. So let's just get into the top performing team decks really quickly. The first place, Colorless Slivers. Oh, wait. Miscategorized, misnamed on Melee, calling you out directly. This is a 4-color control list. The team captained by Mason Grody. Of course.
Hey, Mason, cut it out. You're not funny. Cut it out.
Calling you out. So this, of course, had 4 One Rings and 4 Deleted Halfling. Something that I've seen pop up in a few lists when I was going through a bunch of stuff in One Ring decks is a single Minamo School at Water's Edge. That's where I attended grad school. You can pay blue. Actually, I would never attend grad school here because
it's blue.
Yeah, it's blue. You add blue, or you can pay blue and tap Minamo to untap a legendary permanent, which may include the One Ring. So that's a pretty cool thing. Let's give me some more One Ring activations, please.
Mm-hmm.
Second place team, Andrew Branham. They brought Green Tron with a now standard 3 One Rings made, 1 on the side. Third place, Brandon MacArthur's team. I'm using these names because these are the names that they are in Melee. There's I guess a team appointed team captain type person. So forgive me if I'm not saying the other people. Brandon MacArthur, their team had Golgari Yawgmoth, 3 Orcish Bowmasters, 2 One Rings, 4 Deleted Halfling. Fourth place, Ben Barra's squad. They brought Jeskai Breach, 4 One Rings, and a Haywire Might main. Eric Burgart's team also brought Jeskai Breach, 4 One Ring, and a Haywire Might main as well.
You don't say.
I don't say. Sixth place, I actually did. Sixth place, Devin Slater and friends. They ignored the existence of white mana, used Izzet Breach to, eschew the One Ring, looking more classic here. Christian Valenti's team went old school, just used 5-color creativity. Looks pretty stock to me. And 8th place, Connor Mullally's trio brought another Jeskai Breach deck with 4 of the One Ring and a Minamo in the mana base as well. So if you're counting, that is 6 of the top 8 teams had modern decks that ran the One Ring in some capacity. 4 more decks in the top 24 did as well. I just sort of arbitrarily was like 24 seems like a good place to stop. That brought us to a count of 10 in the top 24. And in terms of decks running Lord of the Ring cards, just for curiosity, 20 of the top 24 teams had some inclusion of the One Ring, the Land Cyclers, Orcus Bowmasters, Forge Anew, and Reprieve. So yeah, it's safe to say Lord of the Ring has impacted Modern.
I'll say.
And then the winners of the event in the end were Eric Burgart's team of Grayson Nemitz on Mono Green Devotion and Pioneer, Matthew Weiss on Jeskai Breach in Modern, and Burgart on Death and Taxes in Legacy. So congratulations to those 3.
Okay. What do we think before we go on? Team thoughts? Anything? It's a lot of rings. Not absurd, but a lot.
It's a little bit different than I would have expected. Because like Stan was saying, like in terms of team stuff, like for me personally in Modern right now, I'd be like, how do I get the free wins? And for me, that's not 4-color control. It'd be something like Living End or Tron. I guess Yawgmoth is potentially sort of a combo win that can get around the One Ring.
So this notion that 4-color doesn't get you free wins, I know where you're coming.
They're pretty free.
Well, it's actually like a $1,500 win. Money pile, am I right? Here's where I think like the difference between that and Murktide, though, is that you could make the argument that 4-color is the best deck in the format. So even though
I do make the argument that it's the best deck in the format right now, I think, but go ahead.
Possibly, but like whether or not you get free wins doesn't change the fact that maybe your 4-color games are like grindy, but you're always favored. You always have the advantage bar.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, because so many of the cards are broken on rate. Basically, there's either pitch spells or 4-mana draw engines or Omnath that brings you back. So I could see that, but it's still an interesting thing to see. I'm a little bit. I was just trying to take a look through the energy data a little bit more to see if I could find a Murktide somewhere that was mislabeled as colorless slivers. Yuck, yuck, yuck. But I didn't see any either. So
no, I was digging. But I guess what I was getting at though is like in terms of what I would plan on bringing to this is I would have expected maybe a little bit more Living End, a little bit more Yawg. Maybe a little bit more creativity, although I think people are seeing the potential weaknesses there. So just kind of like, or something like Breach. Just the sort of the decks that's like, hey, I did my thing and it was good enough to win if you didn't hate me out type stuff. And then just sort of rely on my team to carry the games that I didn't do that or I faced the hate or something like that.
So where do we go next? We're leaving.
Yes.
Leaving this Teams Trio tournament.
We're leaving America.
Take a look at the. Oh,
we're going to leave America entirely.
America.
Let's go straight to Stan's new home in Europe. I guess, are you in Europe? Is that technically Europe? I thought, the Brexit. Are you your own continent now?
It's the British Isles, but we're still in Europe, continentally.
Okay, good.
But not continental Europe.
Well, so you're like Madagascar. So Legacy
Yes.
European Tour. It's secretly Modern, not Legacy at all.
That is the name of their brand. That's right.
Yes. So this was a big tournament in Bologna. How do you actually say that city? Is it Bologna?
I think how you just said it.
I thought it was Bologna.
So my Bologna has a first name.
It's LMS.
It's OSCAR.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, that's my Bologna's first name.
Yeah, it has a second name, and that's MAYER.
Yeah,
No.
that's not, no.
Is it MEY?
I think it's MAY.
It's
MAYER.
No,
Yeah.
that seems weird.
It's Golovchuk. His name is Oscar Golovchuk.
This tournament.
Oh yeah, Stan. I totally forgot.
My kid's name is Oscar. This was I hijacked the bit, and I thought
Oscar.
It was a good hijack.
He deserves a choice of whether he's going to be mentioned on the podcast. My children have said, "Please do not mention me by name. I don't want to be associated with this in the future." So
Okay. Yeah.
so that's why I would just call them my child.
Right. My kid just learned to say the word mermaid, so I don't think he knows what podcast is yet.
So he's a merfolk man.
But you're buying him those Aether Vials and Sulin of the Sky or whatever, right?
Felon of Sea and Sky.
They're cheap. Yeah. They're cheap. I'd be crazy.
Well,
I have to invest in his future.
It's crazy not to buy them. But this tournament had 676 players. Big paper tournament in Bologna. And We had some nice meta breakdowns done by the tournament itself, which is nice because I think they did some work double checking deck lists, consolidating things, because these numbers that they provided didn't exactly match what was on Melee frequently. Like, for example, like the 4-color control here was split up among things like 4-color mid-range, 4-color elementals, etc., etc. So thank you, Legacy European Tour folks, for doing the hard work for us. So they provided a graphical chart of the meta breakdown for day one. This does not include percentages, so you're going to have to bear with us, listeners. You're not going to get exact percentage numbers. You're going to get deck counts. So the first one up here is 4-color control. 66 folks, which handily is about 10%. And so, yeah, that's a lot.
It is a little less than 10%, though, which is interesting because I was expecting, I still expect Modern to be over 10% for whatever the most popular deck is of the moment, in the 10 to 15% range instead of the under 10% range. So it is kind of cool that even though a lot of people like 4-color, it's still below 10.
Yeah. And I'll just run through, let's just get through like maybe the top 8 or so, right? So we've got Rakdos Scam, 56 copies. 5-color Creativity, 54. Living End with 48. Is It Murktide making a much stronger appearance here? Still the 5th most popular deck in the room, 41 copies. Hammer with 36. Mono Green Tron with a mere 31. Golgari Yogg, 26. Rhinos, 24. And then I'll end it here with combo Breach style decks and Boros Burn at 23 copies.
Yeah. So just to be clear, that spread that you just gave is basically between 9% of the meta and 3% of the meta.
Yeah, that's my usual. That's my usual arbitrary cutoff. 3%.
3%-ish. 23 is around 3% of 690.
I will point out some notable things below this. One is that Burn is indicated as an 8 versus Boros Burn. I'm curious what that actually means. Maybe there was more Burn that they didn't catch. I feel like after all this hard work that I would have understood what this difference is. But we had a 9 mono black Coffers pilots. More on that later. We had 16 Azorius Control, 18 5-color Zoo still hanging out there. We had 4 people on Boros Convoke, the modern version of the Boros Convoke deck. We even had some people on Jeskai Prowess. So there's a lot of stuff still happening out there.
Yeah, but main differences here between what we saw before. I think this falls much more in line with what we expect the meta to be in a lot of ways. Although, surprised that Living End is lower than Scam and Creativity. I would expect Living End to be higher, even in an event like this. A little surprised that Murktide is 5th and not 3rd, personally. And maybe I'm a little surprised that Mono Green Tron is only at 5-ish% of the meta and not closer to 8% of the meta. So there are a few surprises here. Scam's a little higher than I thought. Creativity is a little higher than I thought at this point. And maybe those are the 2 big ones.
Can we talk? And when I'm asking this, I'm like, hey, friends, maybe you can help me understand this. And I know, Stanislav, you mentioned that you mentioned in your words on screens last week that Dave and Devin so kindly read off.
Love that.
You mentioned that you've been playing some Scam.
Wait, you're going to ask the guy who got a 3-2, not the guy who got a 5-0 with Scam last week?
Oh, yeah, you played Scam too. So what is Scam doing right now that is still so good that people are running it out so strongly? Like, is it the fact that it just still can scam you out? Is it that Orcish Bowmasters is better than people are giving it credit for? Like, what's the deal with Scam?
Yes.
Okay.
I mean, Stan hates Scam, to be clear.
I do. Yeah.
Not a deck you like playing.
Well, Dave, you had a hot run. Like, do you have a sense for what's Scam's competitive differences? I have a theory, but yours might be more informed.
I think it's very good at disruption, of course, because of the grief openings, and then it's really good against low interaction decks. So if you have a deck like a Tron, and that's a big part of your meta, you're going to feel pretty good about scamming people. I think it's pretty good against Living End, depending on how you make them spend their Force of Negation. If they have to Force of Negation your Feign Death, but you manage to get a different card out of their hand with the first scam trigger, that's probably helpful too. So I think the decks that rely on those kind of like taking a couple of cards away with grief early are pretty good still.
Yeah, and not to mention Dothi Voidwalker, just like a house in the Living End matchup too.
Yeah, and it's still playing those. The list that I played was 2 Bowmasters, 4 Voidwalkers. I think that I didn't see a lot of these lists close up, so we'll see. Maybe we can take a look, because this tournament was actually won by Scam. Am I right? Scam versus Murktide was the finals of this tournament. So I think Scam just has a lot of play. It's a good mid-range deck. I don't think it's particularly great against 4-color control. So, that's a little bit of a problem, but we could see where it goes from there.
There may be data about the 4-color matchup, but I don't think it folds to 4-color necessarily, because you could have those openings of where you grief your opponent and then you get down, like you do a turn 1 grief, turn 2 Ragavan, turn 3 Blood Moon. Or you can sometimes get Blood Moon out on 2 with a Ragavan, an unchecked Ragavan.
That's true. It's more like you can't really lean into the Fury openings with that, or really expect your Feign Death Grief to survive, because they're just going to solitude you at some point. And so that's the stuff that maybe is a little harder to, like, if you put all your eggs in one basket with Scam against 4-color, it's probably going to be trouble. But if you play a grindier game like they do, or you have some tools for that, or you Blood Moon them, that can be good. Although Blood Moon isn't that great against a lighted halfling. So it's kind of like we talked about last week. So I like I said, I don't think it folds. I just don't think it's a great matchup in that case either.
Yeah, I think halfling, like, you do have the bolts and the push, but the halfling openers is kind of what makes your furies better. Like,
it can. Yeah.
And I think the other point to answer Shane's question that Dave, you kind of hinted almost at the other side of this, where it's like it's good against low interaction decks. I also think it's kind of hard to interact against. Like, Feign Death is a protection spell. Like, it's practically a counter spell, so that even if, like, someone tries pointing a Solitude or Lightning Bolt at your grief, like, there's a chance you blow them out entirely as well.
Yeah, I do think that part of Scam is a little underrated. I even, for example, sided in Shieldred against a Tron player who tried to kill my Shieldred with a Dismember, and then I Feign Deathed my Shieldred and just brought it right back. And that does feel like a blowout when you get in the mid game. We were kind of like, I'm going to bring back one of my good creatures. I'm going to bring back Fury again. Like, it's true. Those spells feel bad, but they can be still pretty useful, even when you're not doing a turn 1 move. I don't know. I think Scam is a good deck. I think it's like a good, fine deck. It's not everybody's taste, because like Stan said, you run out of gas, but I think it's a fun deck still. It's probably my favorite deck in Modern. If I really think about this list of things, it's the thing that I feel the most comfortable playing right now.
Sweet. Yeah, I mean, it's probably just the only and good Thoughtsy style deck, right? We're just like, I'm going to take people's pieces away. I'm going to make decisions on what they want to work with and make it hard for them to work with their original plan, and just force them to rely on what they draw.
It's certainly the only one that's featuring Thoughtseize in this top 15 or so. So I think that makes sense.
David.
Shane.
David, I received recently a
little treat?
Oh, look at that little treat.
Because summertime is a time for treats, Shane.
Are those the Trader Joe's? Get at us, Trader Joe's, the little cones?
I'm holding a tiny Blue Bunny ice cream cone in my hand right now. If I hold it closer to the camera, then it looks huge. If I hold it back, it shows how tiny.
No,
it really is.
Keep it close to the camera, because it makes me want it more.
Yeah. All right. Well, but we also received some other treats some summertime treats from our longtime friends at Barrister and Mann, right?
Yeah, Dave. I got my favorite thing, the large white cardboard box from Barrister and Mann, and inside,
I'm just eating my cone while you're talking.
Go for it. It contained shaving soap samples of Presto and Adagio, which you have heard us talk about in recent weeks. I also have a bar of soap of the lemon verbene, and what I'm most excited about is the vial of lavender interrupted fragrance. And what I thought I'd do is one of our classic crack-a-packs from Barrister and Mann. I was just going to live smell a few of these things as we talk.
All right. I love it. I have one to throw into the mix too, but we'll do that after you do yours.
Okay, let's do lavender interrupted. I'm just going to spray this. Okay, that's good. Yeah, it's awesome. I mean,
what is it giving?
I think the initial thing, of course, is a lavender. But there's much, much more. I would say a little bit of like patchouli-ness, some lavender-ness, some like clove-ness, some vanilla. But then there's like a really good balance, of course, of like the lighter stuff. Like a little bit of, definitely some like vetiver, which is like, sort of herbaceous and whatnot. So this is kind of astounding, honestly. And like, I'm a fragrance guy, that. I've mentioned this in the past. And I think this is like, dare I say it, unisex, unigender. It's I think women and men and people of all folks on the gender spectrum, go for it. It's great. So that's the first thing I'm gonna enjoy.
And what was that one again?
That is the Lavender Interrupted Fragrance. I know that was a labor of love for Will over at Barrister and Man. And then next up, I'm gonna do the Presto, because I think Presto, if I remember correctly, is Presto faster or slower, Dave? Presto is faster.
Presto would be fast. That's like 200 beats per minute.
Yep. Smells fast. This is super light. Like, this is like a wake you up in the morning shaving soap for sure. It's got like, it's not quite menthol-y at all, but it's definitely like, very big on the herbs, the freshness, lemon. I'm into that. Excited to use that. This morning, I did my favorite thing, which is shave with Barrister and Man products. I used my remaining bits of Atomic Holiday. I also got one of the clearance bottles of Atomic Holiday, the aftershave splash, and I'm loving combining those two things. So yeah, I'm hyped to use all these things for sure. What do you have, Dave?
So I have an eau de cologne, and as you may not know, or you probably do know, Shane, I don't use too many fragrances, but it's summer.
What is this one?
This is the eau de cologne Citrus Rose, and it is a member of their discontinued Latha line, Limone, a soft, fresh blend of lemon, orange, and rose, perfectly balanced, a scent that is light, refreshing, and which will withstand even the strongest, stickiest heat wave.
That sounds great.
And I got to tell you this, it's got a vibe that really feels like, hi, I'm here. I'm ready for fun, but not in an obnoxious way. Like in a real, like, hey, you might want to stand next to this person on a summery day and have a couple of light beers and maybe a Blue Bunny ice cream cone.
I'm jealous of that. So yeah, if you want to check out the variety of products, fragrances, shaving soaps, bar soaps that we mentioned, all kind of good stuff for you, your family, your loved ones. Get it for yourself, get it for some gifts. You can go to Barrister and Man, MANN. You can use coupon code TheDiveDown M23, that's like magic 23, for 15% off your first order. Lets Will over at Barrister and Man know that you came to them through us. Get a little bit off your total at the end there, and keeps us going with Will, our longtime sponsor over at Barrister and Man.
That's right. Get a little treat for yourself this summer. All right, but let's talk about this day 2 breakdown. So we got good data on conversions from this. And so I saw this morning online, Shane pulled it into the doc, looked at this earlier, that Anil Yahi on Twitter shared a post from another user that had shared conversion stuff.
So you're hearing this fourth hand.
Yeah, this is by someone named Lardak on Discord that shared the conversion data on the meta breakdown, which is great. And why don't we go through that? So the conversion data here, it is going to go in order of what the day 1 meta is, and then we'll talk about what number of decks actually made it into day 2. Or do you want to talk about what the best was? We have both. Like, do you want to go through the day 2 meta in order of prevalence, or do you want to talk about how things compare day 1 versus day 2?
Yeah, let's just start with conversion rate rather than just kind of list it all down. So yeah, let's just start with kind of just like the best performers from day 1, and it starts with a little deck called Mono Black Coffers.
That's where we're starting?
Well,
okay.
3 of the 9 players made day 2.
That's true.
For a 33% conversion rate. And so
one of them made top 8 as well. Right?
Yeah, spoilers. So what this deck is all about is
Karn,
the Great Creator, Shieldred, the One Ring, a bunch of really annoying looking to play against control spells. It looks really unfun to play against. You make a lot of mana, you get stuff with Karn, you cast it from your wish board, and make your opponent not able to do anything.
I mean, it's just a Tron-esque plan with different payoffs, right?
Yes.
You use coffers, you get big mana, you use Karn, you cast big spells. Like, this is where we're at.
Mm-hmm. This had a 53.3% win rate as well. So it did perform well, it converted well, and Mono Black Coffers. If this becomes a thing that people in tournaments more in the US, more Magic Online, start playing and winning with, have to pay a little bit more attention to this. But for now, interesting sort of rogue strategy.
Yeah.
Tron is up next, a 25.8% conversion rate. Sounds really significant, but then the actual win rate of the deck is around 51%. So it's not terrible.
Yeah.
It just sort of indicates that maybe some people ran really hot and maybe the people who ran cold just sort of dropped early. And yeah, I mean, 25.8, the second most successful deck out of the day one metagame. So Tron did well here. Yawgmoth also doing well with a 19.2% conversion rate, a 56.7% win rate on the melee data. Many players at this tournament were on the 3 Orcish Bowmasters and 2 One Ring plan. I think this shows like a slightly increased adoption of these cards, at least in the European metagame. I mean, for this deck, I guess just what, Zulaport Cutthroat wins through protection? Like you still combo off, their stuff doesn't matter, no matter how many cards they have or what their board presence looks like, you're still going to kill them?
That is true.
Good. I mean, I'm kind of interested to see, I wish I knew more about why Yawgmoth is sort of seeming like it's increasing in popularity, increasing in power level a little bit right now.
I think you hit the nail on the head. And one thing to note too is like generally Blood Artist is what people run in that deck, right? And if you're running Zulaport, the difference between Blood Artist and Zulaport Cutthroat is the targeting.
Yes.
Blood Artist targets, Zulaport doesn't. People have talked about this before in the past, and we're always kind of like, well, it doesn't really matter that much. It's much better for us to have access to Blood Artist because it's whenever any creature dies, we get a trigger.
Yeah.
But in this world, Zulaport Cutthroat, which doesn't target but only triggers on your creatures dying, is a better fit because you get to win through somebody's ring turn. And in fact, turn 4 can be really definitive for Yawgmoth, right? So if Yawgmoth is ramping and they're getting ready to do their combo, and your opponent spends their turn 4 dropping the One Ring and is like, hi, I'm going to fog you. You don't care, and maybe they're totally shields down.
Yeah. I mean, when I think about it, though, I'm just kind of like, well, Fury's still out there. It's
where?
It's in Scam. It's in
Scam and it's in 4 colors.
The Elementals decks.
4 color, I would love to see these lists. Devin was talking about how Fury was getting less popular in those decks and might only be a 2 of or be a sideboard kind of thing that people do. Scam is definitely running it for sure. But the rest of this list, there's not that much Fury that has to be here.
Yeah.
Right? Especially when you look at the numbers that are there.
Yeah, and the Delighted Halfling is in all of these Yawgmoth decks. It does survive Wrenn and 6. So maybe that's just like enough of the time you're having a turn 3 Yawgmoth, or double spelling more often, more early, because you have increased access to mana with like your Wall of Roots and your Mana Dork surviving. And maybe that's just enough where it's like all these things are adding up.
I really think it's also the fact that the ring fog trigger doesn't do anything against it. So if there's a ton of people playing the ring, then yeah.
I guess I kind of want to go back to Tron for a second too, since we're kind of seeing Tron do well. And really the only difference is the One Ring and the existence of Karn in the deck. Like it has Karn, it has the One Ring, it has a Wishboard. And maybe that's just enough where it's like, hey, you can't use your tools against me. At least if your tools include the One Ring.
Right.
And I go over the top of what you're doing. Like, I don't really care about your 4-color control nonsense. I don't really care about, a number of things you can do. I don't really want to face down Scam that often, where it's like, oh, I have my path to Tron, or I have my big Tron payoff, and Scam's just like, well, get that out of here. But I think that there is a lot of, I think Tron's one of the decks that I think you and Devin, Dave, were kind of like, what goes over the top of 4-color? Like, what is kind of the biggest end game? And I think Tron is still always, has been that particular player.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's why it's possibly good right now, or why it's gotten a tick up for sure. It's one of the best ring decks. It's got 8 rings in it, basically, because it can go get the extra one with Karn. It stops your opponent's rings, and it has bigger payoffs to use for the mana, and it has things like Ulamog main deck where you can just kill their One Ring and get it out of the way, and then keep going on your side. So yeah, and 4-color control has struggled kind of against Tron over the years. Like, I'd have to look at the matchup data to see for sure, but that feels like a matchup that Tron should win. It's just, I get to the top of my chain and I kill your guys and I move on.
Yep.
But yeah, I mean, clearly that's a deck that's on the rise right now and should be.
Yeah. Azorius Control is up next, 18.8% conversion rate. 3 of the pilots made it, so it's not like it was a huge deck on the weekend in general. Overall, it did have a sub 50% win rate at a mere 46.7. So Azorius Control didn't blow the doors off, but simply because of 3 of the pilots making it, 18.8% is one of our higher conversion rates.
Yeah.
Any thoughts you all have about Azorius Control? Like, this is literally just, hey, I'm still Azorius Control, and I have a card draw engine, right?
I'm honestly not sure what the appeal is. I
mean,
wouldn't
people
be
love playing
surprised.
Azorius Control.
I guess, but like the Omnath decks are so similar that we see like Azorius Controls like splashing for one-off Omnaths from time to time.
Yeah.
And you're still playing like and counting heavily on Solitude.
And some of them are playing Ren and 6, even. It's like Azorius Control splashing Ren and 6. Like, I do think it's a continuum between those two decks. I mean, Control is also trying to go over the top of the standard setting deck of the Ring right now, which is 4-color, right? So it's kind of like if I go more Control, I can go over the 4-color decks and also kind of maybe sneak through some of the other stuff.
Up next, 5-color Creativity. 13% conversion rate, a low win rate at 46.5% on the weekend. So if you go back to check the tape, it was the 3rd most popular deck on the weekend. It performed fairly poorly. And we talked about this a little bit earlier, right? Like why the Creativity decks might be kind of pushing a boulder up a hill for a while until they potentially can adapt, or they just sort of just decrease in popularity because of the metagame around them. Dave, have you been playing your favorite deck, 5-color Creativity, at all?
No.
I know.
No.
That
Not
was
at
a
all
joke,
right
Dave.
now. Yeah, okay.
Speaking of favorite decks, Rhinos, a mere 12.5% conversion rate, a mere 48% win rate. This is kind of where I think Rhinos is going to be for a bit. I think I have seen people test out some new tech. I saw a deck running Questing Beast, which, if you remember, one of the 16 lines of text on it says that damage from creatures you control cannot be prevented.
Yeah.
So that is a way around the protection from the One Ring. Of course, as you mentioned last week, Dave, you and Devin mentioned about how Bonecrusher Giant could potentially see a place coming back into Rhinos because you cast Stomp. That has the damage can't be prevented clause on it as well. And then that gets your damage through the protection of the One Ring. But this is just a deck that, unless you're playing the One Ring, nothing was really added to it. And I don't know if the additive nature of the One Ring, the power of the cards, from the Lord of the Rings set, the power of the cards from that set, I don't know if they're so good that it's like, well, it's not like Modern Horizons where it's like you're either playing Modern Horizons 2 or your deck stinks. But we're at a point right now where the metagame is so significantly shifted that Rhinos may take a dip here. So I don't know. What are your thoughts on Rhinos right now, Stanislav? Are you like rushing to play the One Ring in it? Are you like, I want 4 Bonecrusher Giant right now?
No, I'm not rushing to play the One Ring. Maybe it's just good enough that that's probably correct, but it feels incorrect to me because it's unpitchable.
Yeah. I know you love the pitch.
I love to pitch. Yeah. I think that...
You can fit that on your knuckle tats, I think, if you do it just right.
PTCH.
Everyone's going to think I'm into cricket.
I think they call it bowling.
Yeah, you're a bowler.
Okay.
But they do it on a pitch. Is that not right?
No,
right?
that's where footy is played, on the pitch.
I see.
I don't know. I don't have thoughts about Rhinos right now. I do think that it's probably suffering. Like, if you look at the metagame immediately before Lord of the Rings, like, and after, Rhinos took a big, obvious hit. I think that it has an uphill battle against the 2 possibly strongest, maybe even 3 strongest decks between Living End Scam and 4-color. And I don't know if there's any number of Bonecrushers, Questing Beasts, or whatever the heck you want to play that can like solve all of those problems.
Yeah.
I do respect the fact that like it's still a very consistent proactive deck, and maybe you can just ride on like cascading on turn 3 and then having some well-timed force of negations or other interaction to get you across the finish line. But I feel like the format has slowed down too much for that to be as consistent as it used to be. That's my concern. If I were to play Modern right now, I would probably try to source cards for something else. Like, I might actually even just look at Murktide because I have that, or Burn because I have that. But if I wanted
What about
to play...
Living End? You have Living End.
So
Don't you?
I do have Living End. I even got the Oliphants. But the thing that sets good Living End players apart from me is that the best Living End players know how to beat the hate and can like beat a Resting Peace or Leyline of the Void. And I I find those hard. So, and Living End Mirrors I hear are terrible. I don't think I've ever done one, but I've heard they're like unbearable. So yeah, maybe I actually would just look at Living End. But in any case, I don't think Rhinos is kind of the thing to do in the current metagame of the month, basically.
Yeah. So the list of decks that we just talked about, for what it's worth, are all the decks that either gained large percentage of meta between the first day and the second day, or gained a small percentage of meta between the first day and the second day. So just a rehash of that list, regardless of what their win rates were. That was Creativity that we talked about, Mono Green Tron, Golgari Yawgmoth, Rhinos, Azorius Control, Mono Black Coffers. Those are the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Those are the 6 decks.
It.
Yeah, 6 decks that gained. The list of decks that lost from day 1 to day 2 is pretty interesting as well. So 4-color Control actually had less decks in the second day than in the first. That was a very small amount. Even though they had a 10% conversion rate, it was actually less than they ended up with less meta between day 1 and day 2. Very small difference. Scam was less than between the 2 days, but also pretty much close to the same. Those are the ones that weren't far off. Living End and Murktide were also similar, where they were technically less, but not like a huge amount different. Hammer starts to be quite a bit less. Combo Breach starts to be a good amount less. Boros Burn, 5-color Zoo, and Amulet Titan all are decks that had a good amount less between the two kind of days than those other decks.
Yeah. So I think this is good data. We have both win rates and conversion rates, and there's a bunch of people playing. So I'm happy to have such a large paper tournament to see how the meta is beginning to take shape more firmly, perhaps. Let's get through this top 8 really quickly. We have Ricardo Gorla on Amulet Titan. We didn't talk much about Titan, but this deck is one that is trying to run the One Ring. This particular player ran 3. Up next was Maximilian Przybylski on Scam. I'm gonna butcher these names because I do not speak this language natively. We have Wojciech Koloschuk on Golgari Yawgmoth. 2 One Ring there. Lorenz Vanderbeek on Golgari Yawgmoth as well with 3 One Rings. Enrico Mercurio on Mono Black Coffers with 3 One Ring. Igor Titov on Scam. Mackay Kundergraber on Murktide. Whoa, Murktide still making it. LB Bale 93, which is how they're listed on Melee. I don't know if that's their given name, but LB Bale 93 was on Scam as well. So we saw 3 Scam in this top 8 after a pretty middling weekend. And the deck still does seem strong in the hands of capable folks. Like you said when we were talking about it earlier, it can do things other decks really can't in the format. It can disrupt what other people are doing in really significant ways, and then still turn the corner and finish people off. So that I think is one thing that, maybe I guess 4-color can also do stuff like that, just disrupt in a different manner. But this sort of does the proactive disruption that, you get to pick what you take out of people's hands. So,
well, I think that one thing here too is, it's like you said, it's one of the only decks that's running hand disruption as a major part of what it's doing right now. And last week we said, I don't think that Thought Seizing the Ring was that great because, then a lot of times they just redraw into another one, and the decks that run it don't really care about Thoughtseize that much. But I'm kind of thinking about it a little bit differently now. I'm wondering if hand disruption's a bit better against these kind of decks that hinge on really good 4-drops than they used to be, because it gives you a chance to maybe grief them and Thoughtseize them, or maybe you get to do a little bit more. So I don't know. I'm thinking about it a little bit differently now. I'm wondering if that is one of the better answers.
Seems like always a good target to take out of someone's hand for sure.
Okay, Shane, so we've looked at a couple tournaments now.
Yes.
You did a lot of work on data this week.
Enough.
enough. Where do you want to go next? Like, what other piece of data do we think we have that that is worth adding some more dimension to what we've been talking about?
We have some cool challenge stuff. Stanislav, I know that you were getting into some spreadsheeting of that, and it's a secret spreadsheet. I don't know where it is.
You're right, Shane. So what I've done is I looked at every modern challenge, including the one showcase challenge that has happened since Lord of the Rings cards were available on Magic Online. So that takes us all the way back to the I think it was the Friday challenge on June 23rd. Now, if you recall, during those first few days of LOTR legality, cards were only available in treasure chests.
Yeah, so we had the card availability problems.
Yeah, it was bad. So the data starts to change over the course of the next 3-4 weeks, 11 tournaments, give or take, where we start to see like cards eventually become more prevalent once people are able to like get them through drafts, or actually just like literally buy them directly from Card Hoarder and other retailers, right?
Yeah, or the rental services having them, things like that, right? So
yeah. So what I've done is I've combined all the decks that have appeared in the top 8s as listed on MTG Goldfish from these tournaments, as well as combined all of the listed top cards, top creatures, and top spells. And there's actually a turning point that we can see when like Lord of the Rings cards really hit. Because in the first couple tournaments, it was still basically more of the same. You know, if we look at just to throw this out there, we're not going to actually go through every tournament one by one, but the June 23rd challenge, which was won by Grinding Station playing the One Ring.
Corey Baumeister, right?
Is that Bonk 101?
Maybe not. I thought, yeah. He won one, though, too. So anyway.
Right. Well, in any case, we still see Crashing Footfalls like in 8th place. So people were sourcing it, but the top card in that tournament was Endurance. You know, so like not necessarily Lord of the Rings reaction. We really start to see Lord of the Rings reactions appear among the top cards on July 1st is when the One Ring became the most popular card in the July 1st Modern Challenge. 34 copies in 31% of decks.
Wow, okay.
If we look at overall top cards from these 11 tournaments, the One Ring is actually number 9.
9th, yeah.
It's the 9th most popular card in the last 3-4 weeks of tournaments, and I think it's trending up currently. Ragavan actually remains the most popular card, but I think that has to do with the fact that like Scam is really popular, and like some people are still registering Murktide. We still see like the mono red generic Ragavan decks, Breach, of course. But overall, if we look at top creatures, the impact of Lord of the Rings, Orcish Bowmaster does also have a big appearance, where it's the 7th most popular creature across these tournaments.
Yeah, and Delighted Halfling is the 8th most popular creature as well.
Yeah. I wonder where the cyclers come in. Like I see Generous Ent come in at number 31. It's the 31st.
Surprising it's that low, but you know, maybe Living End hasn't quite taken off the same way. Although your top 8 data over here would indicate that Living End is one of the decks most likely to top 8.
That's true. Yeah. So if we look at the actual top 8 data, 4-Color Omnath has done the best. All right. Across all these tournaments, it's made top 8 11 times. In one tournament in particular, it did it 5 times. That was that July 1st tournament where the One Ring was the most popular card. It was in 1st, 2nd, 3rd, and 5th. That's the one where like Aspiring Spike and Harry 13 had a 4-color mirror match, and Spike came in second.
Yep.
Looking deeper into like likelihood of 1/8, Scam is close behind. So Scam made top 8 10 times, followed by Murktide, which is still putting up decent numbers, 3rd most popular deck in top 8s. But then we see Yawgmoth, then we see Living End, and we see Amulet Titan. So I think Amulet Titan is good to mention. We haven't really talked about it yet. Amulet Titan is also a One Ring deck these days.
Yeah. Surprise, surprise, everybody.
So, right. So if we're looking at like the decks, the top 6 most likely decks to top 8 in this period, 5 of the top 6 are playing new cards. The only outlier is Murktide Regent.
Yeah.
So yeah, Lord of the Rings is good. I think this kind of helps put into perspective like the paper data we're seeing too, like especially behind Scam, Omnath, and Yawgmoth to some extent.
So what's interesting to me here, I think, is that like the deck that was already good and perhaps got better is probably Rakdos Scam, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think Rakdos was in the top 2 or 3, and it's still in the top 2 or 3. Kind of surprisingly, it's really only picked up Bowmaster. That's kind of it, and I don't even think Bowmaster is that amazing, but it does help a little bit against decks that want to draw a lot of cards against you, a little bit.
Yeah.
And then,
we haven't really talked about how to play Bowmaster, but the interesting thing with Bowmaster is it's also good with Feign Death. Like, eventually people will try to kill it, and then if you Feign Death Bowmaster, it comes in and triggers all over again and makes your army bigger.
Yes, it does. Although Bowmaster doesn't, we got to remember, it triggers on ETB and also whenever someone draws an extra card.
Right.
So you're still getting triggers off of it. But if someone does kill it, yeah, you do get an extra trigger there. It's probably not in response to their draws, but you'll get an extra ping and you'll get an army that gets a little bit bigger as well. Yeah.
Stanislav, thanks for putting together some data on this. I'm interested to see, this is the kind of thing where it's like, now it almost makes sense to bring it back, perhaps like the monthly analysis of the modern metagame, because I think we're going to start seeing more shifts in the coming weeks and months, of course, as people keep adapting to what's going on.
Well, don't forget, there's a ton of people getting ready for a Pro Tour that's 2 weeks from now.
Oh, yeah, the Pro Tour. I can't wait to talk about this some more next week. It's going to be interesting to see how do we do a Pro Tour prediction episode that's significantly different from this one, because I think what we want to do next, after all this, we've had the team tournament, the paper tournament, a breakdown of these recent online tournaments. I spent a bunch of time looking at kind of just recent deck lists from the modern leagues and seeing what people are bringing there. And one of the things that we've done in our past kind of like deck dump style episodes is to sort of give a general, up arrow, down arrow. Where do we see these decks trending? Where do we see their relative power level to where they were just a few weeks ago? And you want to play the up arrow, down arrow game.
Yeah,
love that game.
Absolutely.
Okay? This is going to be scattershot in terms of the order of these decks, and I'm hoping I'm including everything that's worth talking about. Let's talk about 4-color control.
Can we define what does up arrow mean and what does down arrow mean?
Do you think it's better than it was?
Do we like it or not coming into the next couple of weeks?
Yeah, up arrow, down arrow, or neutral. Do you think it's better, worse, or neutrally positioned compared to before Lord of the Rings?
Compared to before Lord of the Rings.
Yeah, that's where I'm at. In terms of where you would talk about it a couple of weeks ago and how good do you think it is now?
Gotcha.
Do you like these rules of engagement, Stanislav?
Yeah. The
Sure.
listener can play along.
4-color control. I think it has to be an up arrow.
Much better than before Lord of the Rings.
Yeah. I think it's like the deck to beat right now, probably. If you have to plan for it, you have to plan on seeing it, you have to have a plan against it. You hope they don't get a million cards.
Up arrow in power. Down arrow in what it does for the format.
Okay.
Well, yeah. What it does for you mean how much you enjoy it being in the format?
Oh, I don't think it's just me.
Yeah.
Okay.
Murktide.
Down arrow to format health, perhaps.
Yeah.
Murktide. I'm gonna personally give it a down arrow. I don't see counter magic is worse. I think right now, I don't see what it's bringing to the table that it wasn't doing before.
It wasn't the finals in Bologna.
Yeah,
I still think it's probably a down arrow compared to some of the other decks, but I wouldn't be surprised. Here's the question for me. Maybe we can talk about it more next week. But when you think about these decks, like what decks are people actually going to pick up and play at the Pro Tour?
Yeah,
it's very hard to convince people not to play lightning bolts and counterspells at a Pro Tour. But I do think that there's a chance that they won't.
Yeah, I think
there's a chance that some of these other decks will be more prevalent than Murktide going into the Pro Tour. Even with a bunch of people who really love playing, is it control? Is it decks like this? I still think it might be less prevalent than even Bologna.
All I'll say is that Murktide, it's a side arrow because I don't think it was that great before Lord of the Ring. It was like it already had a down arrow, so like I don't think it's actually getting worse. I think it's just kind of like still the same Murktide.
Okay,
that's fair. How do you feel about 5-color creativity, y'all?
Worse, clearly worse. I think.
Yeah,
seems worse. Yes.
It can't take advantage of like the new Lord of the Rings stuff. I think it has a hard time with like Living End. Breach seems to be making a bit of a comeback. I just don't really know what you're gonna do with this. So
the payoff just isn't good in this context anymore. It's not as good as it used to be.
It targets.
Context. Yep, that's the problem. It targets. You don't get as many cards off of that move that you used to.
Yawgmoth.
Obvious up arrow.
Yeah.
Seems good. Seems good to me, clearly. It has ways to win that other decks don't. And, I think if we keep seeing people trying to, play the One Ring, win through repeated fogs, things like that, then yeah, sure, Yawgmoth. Rakdos Scam. I think we've said our piece about Scam, but anything you all want to repeat? Do you think it's better than it was? Or do you think it's kind of like still good?
I would put more of a side arrow on it, I think, honestly. I don't think it's particularly gained from this metagame, but I think it's managed to endure and remain a good deck. That's kind of how I think about it.
I feel like it's at like 1:30 p.m. You know what I mean? Like it's trending up where it is still as good as puts up as good results as it did before, but it's possibly benefited from the fact that like it also got new cards that it can continue to put up good results. Like if Orcish Bowmaster wasn't a card, would Scam be as good?
Yes.
It probably would be, right? Like,
yeah.
Orcish doesn't like add anything game changing. It's just like a nice new toy that fits in there.
I mean, it has to be game changing enough for people to add it to the deck and like take other cards out, right?
I think I talked about this a little bit last week. I just think that Bowmaster is just the best black 2-drop other than Dauthi Voidwalker.
Yeah.
And so all these decks that run black that want a 2-drop, it's just more value than you can imagine being on a piece of cardboard for 2 mana value in black. And so it's good. I think it's a very good card. I think it's, and it's useful, and it's potentially useful against the ring as a fine piece of kind of penalizing your opponent for taking cards off of the ring. But I also think that it's not game breaking. It's not totally crazy. Although, it's the 7th most popular creature in Modern on Stan's sample of Magic Online data. And I think that part of that is because it also happens to be the highest one on there that is black that people actually cast, because Grief is the most popular creature on Stan's list of data. But, you don't really cast Grief. You do cast Bowmasters.
Yeah. What do you think about Burn? Like, I don't think this is weirdly the meta game where people can try to go under these slower decks right now because of the repeated fogs, right? Like, I don't think Burn's fast enough to get under like turn 3 rings and other things like that, or the life gain from Omnath decks, for Pete's sake.
I don't think we'll see. I think we'll see barely anybody bring Burn to the Pro Tour, because pros won't bring Burn, and it's not a good time to be playing Burn. I don't think anybody's going to bring it unless Ari Lax. I know Ari Lax wrote an article on like Channel Fireball last week that was like, you should play Burn with 4 Roiling Vortex main right now. And it's like, maybe that kind of thing will push it over, but I don't know. I don't think so.
Do you guys remember like 6 months ago when I was complaining that no one's iterating on Burn and they should be playing Roiling Vortex main? And then
no, I don't remember that at all. Nope, didn't happen.
I do. I think it's a lot better now than it was 6 months ago, but Stan, I'm still ready to give you partial credit.
You know what changed? The Roiling Vortex.
What changed?
They play Roiling Vortex main now.
Yeah, because Eidolon's terrible.
No, exactly. I'm saying Roiling Vortex is better now than it was 6 months ago.
Oh, I don't even know about that.
Okay.
6 months ago, people were still cascading.
That's true.
I think, it's just it's a good tool against the life gain for sure. And I think you see a little bit more of that, but I don't know how much appreciably more. I guess 4-color control is if it's 10 to 15% of the meta, then like, I don't know, does it really make Roiling Vortex that much better for like your 85% of your other games? I don't know.
Yeah, maybe.
Green Tron, clearly better.
Yeah.
But how much better really? Like if we're going from like 40, if we're going from like 46% to 51, 52%, that is a lot better. But is it like, is it worth, so there's definitely an up arrow for me. I don't know if it means, do I think it's a tier 1 deck in the meta? I don't know yet. Does it have to be? No.
This is the biggest addition to Tron we've seen in years.
A long time.
Karn?
Yeah.
Right? Like, when was the last time like Tron was like putting up good results, or was a viable choice? Actually, maybe it was during like one of the 4-color Omnath eras. I think you could play Tron to beat it. So
yeah, but you're right that this is the first definitive card to get added to Tron since Karn, probably Karn the Great Creator, and that's 4 years ago now. That's at the very beginning of our show.
They have been playing Leveler too.
Yeah, Cityscape Leveler. That's a good card. It's in almost every list.
Yeah,
but it's not a 4 of in the in the 75. It's just a good card in your Karn board.
In main deck, it's one of the main deck creatures now at 8 mana.
Okay,
it's like big 8 mana good card type thing. I think people are also kind of realizing that Karn Liberated can come out of the deck. Let's build this in a slightly different way. Let's figure out new colorless strategies and not necessarily rely on the old ways of building this deck. So I think it'll continue to iterate. I think it's a much better choice than it was. It makes me happy, but I'm not buying One Rings right now. So
yeah. So there's 3 decks left, I think, that are on this list that we should talk about.
Yes, what are they?
One is Rhinos.
Yeah, down arrow.
Rhinos, we've all kind of said we think it has a down arrow. Unfortunately, you can still buy Rhinos merch at our shop if you want to. It'll
Please
stay
do.
there for when it comes back. Hammer is the other one. I think we all think that Hammer is probably on a downslide as well, right?
Yes. Yeah.
And then the last one is Breach.
Yeah.
I think Breach is actually should have an up arrow next to it. I think the results at NRG make me think that Breach is a little bit of a sleeper right now as far as One Ring decks go. Didn't perform super great at Bologna, and there's not a huge amount of it on Magic Online. But Underworld Breach is one of the other extremely broken cards in Modern that seems to be underplayed by people.
Yeah.
And so putting Breach with the ring and doing kinds of weird stuff with that feels to me like I would put an up arrow next to that as well, because I think it's one of the best ring decks.
Yeah, the Just Guy version.
I mean, Jeskai, I guess, just because then you're playing Teferi 3. But yeah.
Yeah.
I would be playing Teferi 3 if I have the One Ring, personally. But
Yeah, I'm all for it.
Stan looks skeptical.
I find that deck really hard to evaluate because I feel like it's like a specialist deck where the people who tend to do well with it a lot. Like it's your Jessies and your Corys of the world. And I don't see it like
and Ross.
and like the NRG gamers love it. Like it is a popular deck in the NRG metagame tournament after tournament. So
Right.
I don't see it necessarily like picking up in the same way that like I feel like when Living In gets a shot in the arm, like you just see it spike. Where I don't know if we're seeing it spike per se, but that is also to say like it's clearly good, especially in the right hands. But I kind of think it maybe has like either a side arrow or maybe it's also trending up.
Yeah.
Dave, I do want to talk about very briefly Asmo Food. I think has an up arrow. I think has an up arrow next to it. I think there's so many different ways people are building these decks right now. Even in the deck dump, like there were 4 different, completely different ways that people are building around like Asmo Food combos. I think those are underexplored right now. I don't know if there'll be like some breakout at the Modern Pro Tour or anything like that, but I think that there's clearly something people are doing there.
Are those all Samwise decks?
No, that's the thing.
Is that what they are?
They're not all Samwise decks. There was one, my friend, that was a combo with what is that famous green creature? This one had Protean Hulk as a 4 of, and like you can kill it with Asmo with food. You can sack it to the Viscera Seer. There's also 4 Footsteps of the Goryo. Like you get it in your graveyard, get it back, it dies, and you get all of your combo pieces. One was running a couple of the Balrog because like you can get it out cheaply with like you're killing your own creatures and sacrificing stuff. So it's just like there's a lot of different ways people are doing this stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's maybe next week what we could do is go through some of this deck dump stuff and look for some sleepers and things like that for what could be coming up, because I definitely think that is a whole area that will be explored, should be explored again, because their combo wins through the ring because it relies on Cauldron Familiar, which also does not target. It just does life loss, life gain.
Good point.
So it's another thing. I just think that right now the way that the meta is working out is that people are either better at playing Yawgmoth or they think that Yawgmoth's game in general is better, and it also, once you switch over to Zulaport Cutthroat instead, can win through the rings. So maybe that's just kind of where we're at there as far as a good creature combo deck goes. But I do think Asmo Food's a possibility. There are other things that I think are on the fringe that we should look at. Maybe next week as like our sleepers list for sure weird decks that might show up in the Pro Tour. Because as you know, there's always a chance that someone could break it, although that does not really happen with Pro Tours as much as it used to maybe, 8 years ago.
I think this could be one of those where we see that happen, but maybe it's from the usual suspects, because I don't know if you guys saw Spike was tweeting like 4-0 drops because he doesn't want his tournament testing to get published. Yeah.
That's funny.
So yeah, I'm looking forward to next week. Get to talk a little bit more about some Modern, see what's going on, and to talk to hopefully one or both of y'all next week. So cool. I'm glad to get into the weeds on this a little bit. There's a lot of data out there. The format's shifting quickly beneath our feet, and so keep listening here, and we'll keep talking about it.
And that wraps up another episode of The Dive Down. If you haven't yet, make sure you subscribe to our podcast so you get the latest episodes as soon as they come out. And if you use Apple Podcasts, please leave us a rating and review. If you'd like to submit a question to the podcast, you can reach out to us via email, thedivedown@gmail.com. We are still on Twitter at @thedivedown, but who knows how much longer we're going to be there. But you can tweet us. We keep an eye on that still. If you'd like to support the show, you can join our Patreon over at patreon.com/thedivedown. It is the best way to support us. We'd love to have you in the Dive Down Nation. But you can also check out our store over at thedivedown.com/store. Shout out to all of our amazing sponsors, including manatraders.com. If you sign up for a ManaTraders account using promo code TheDiveDown2023, all one word, you'll get 10% off your first 2 months of renting Magic Online cards. Also get some amazing shaving soaps, body soaps, fragrances, and more at Barrister and Mann using promo code TheDiveDownM23 for 15% off your first order. Save some money on paper cards over at Nerd Rage Gaming with promo code DIVE8 to get 8% off your order with them. And don't forget our brand new sponsor, Heavy Play. Shop at heavyplay.com to buy sleeves, deck boxes, playmats, and use promo code TheDiveDown2023 to get 10% off your first order with them as well. As always, special thanks to the bands Nowhere and Spaceblood for letting us use their music. And until next week, get out there and innovate in modern.